All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out on a Saturday morning. There are still a few parking spaces out there. Deputy went out to encourage people to park where it says do not park, so without giving anybody a ticket. So we're going to give you a little bit of a presentation on a few water safety measures, including specifically swim zones, swim areas, what the city has had, what we're looking to get input from all of you, and also where or what type of buoys or protection to identify the swim zones. And then lastly, to talk a little bit about the possibility of a lifeguard program. Any of you who may be familiar, there are only two entities that actually have a lifeguard program in Pinellas County. The Pinellas County has lifeguards at Fort DeSoto Park, at Sand Key Park, and at Fred Howard Park. And then the city of Clearwater has lifeguards on Clearwater Beach area. But none of the other barrier island communities from Tierra Verde or St. Pete Beach all the way up until you hit Sand Key, and then certainly north of Clearwater Beach, including Dunedin. I think Honeymoon Island. Honeymoon Island does not have lifeguards, do they? And that's a state park, not a county park. It's a little bit different. That's why their fee is $8 to go in versus $5 a day if you go to Fred Howard or Sand Key or Fort DeSoto. So for water safety, obviously, I think all of you are aware, we have clearly, obviously, millions of people who visit our beach. We have been estimating 3.3 million people visited Madeira Beach last year. So that's the city of Madeira Beach. Where do you think the majority of people visit? Beach. Close. Johns Pass Village and Boardwalk. Obviously, very popular, and even when it rains or thunder and lightning or it's not too sunny, so if I go to the sand, I'm not going to get tanned, people will walk through the village and on a rainy day. And we still see cars parked, people walking. Visit St. Pete Clearwater. Hopefully all of you have heard of Visit St. Pete Clearwater. They are the tourism marketing and advertising component of Pinellas County. They are funded by the Tourist Development Tax, or the bed tax. All overnight accommodations for less or fewer than 6 months, so specifically overnight, or even if you rent month to month, your property owner is supposed to levy and collect a 6% bed tax or tourist development tax, and then that gets paid to Pinellas County. And then the county uses the money mainly to market and advertise, not just in the U.S., but also throughout Europe, and now they're expanding into other parts of the world. Also, a portion of that money is used for beach renourishment to add sand back to the coastline. Of course, we have not received any of that funding in Madeira Beach because we have beach growings that have kept our sand for all intents and purposes where it has been. And then the remaining money is used for other kind of tourism-related components, such as funding for Tropicana Field, funding for the Dali Museum, and a few funding for, I think, the Dunedin baseball stadium, et cetera. So you get the pictures. So they Visit St. Pete Clearwater came out, they hire a company that does research, lots of surveys throughout the county, including Johns Pass Village and Boardwalk. And for 2023, that estimate or that research determined over 40 million people, over 16 million people visited, or nearly 16 million people visited Pinellas County. After St. Petersburg, approximately 65% visited St. Petersburg, 29% visited Clearwater Beach, and 28% visited Madeira Beach. So 28% out of almost 16 million is what? It's over 4 million people. So that's their estimate. We've kind of go somewhere in between. We use some of our parking data to determine what our visitor counts are throughout. We can do it month by month or year. So bottom line, obviously, as all of you are aware, we have millions of people who come here, and that number has been growing. Whether we want that number to grow, stay the same, or decline is an interesting topic. Most residents kind of in the middle. Keep it where it is. We don't want to see that many more people. It leads to congestion. It leads to more trash, more negativity. So anyway, that's why come to our community workshops. We will have several over the next probably 6 weeks to talk about the city's master plan and where we're headed for the next 10, 15, 20 years that we'll talk about that. For water safety, otherwise this is called water safety, we want everybody that goes to our beach to be safe. Whether you're on the sand, you drive out there, you bicycle, you walk. When you're on the sand, if you choose to go in the water, obviously we want everybody to be safe. We also want boaters to be safe, obviously. Boaters have their designated areas, which is a gigantic area, obviously, between the Gulf of Mexico, the intercoastal, and then all the other waterways in between. But we want boaters to remain in their area, swimmers to stay in their area. Mix of boaters and swimmers. Too close, it's never much positive out of that. Again, as I said, swimmers versus boaters, protect the water users, keep boats safe and we need to continue to inform, remind, educate folks about where swim areas are and where boats need to go. I would say probably 98, 99% of boaters know where they need to go and where the boats should navigate and where they should not. We're trying to make that 100%, but very difficult to do that. In case any of you are aware, and these discussions, this presentation has not occurred in this city for a very, very long time. If anybody can tell me when they came to a discussion about swim zones or swim safety, please raise your hand. It's probably been a long, long time. We currently have 4 swim areas, designated swim zones in our city. If we just go from south to north, from Johns Pass Waterway, the first swim zone goes about 1,580 feet north to 131st. That is a designated swim zone, meaning we had buoys out there. The buoys were washed away a couple of times in the last couple of years by the storms, and just over time, they get washed away. And we'll go into some detail as to what we're looking to, what types of buoys, if that's how we proceed, which looks like how we're going to proceed. We attempted to install the actual poles and pilings as a safety measure. What type of a safety measure? Can a boat or a swimmer see a pole piling with a sign on it easier than a buoy? I think if you ask, more will probably say yes than no. Of course, as I believe all of you are aware, we had a considerable number of people that did not like the visual aspect of the poles and the pilings once they were installed. We originally had the poles were installed. This is the original how they were installed, and those are not finished. They were not finished, but we received considerable calls, text, emails. Those look terrible. I said, well, they're not finished. They're going to be pushed in more, and they're going to have a sign. And this is...
Will they be lighted?
No.
Reflectors? I mean, because now they're a navigational hazard at night.
So who here has a boat? Just everybody. So please describe how they're a navigational hazard at night.
Can't see them.
Can't see them. It's dark out.
It's dark, you can't see them.
Okay.
I mean, I know where they're at, but there's a lot of...
Is there some type of responsibility for a boater to be able to see where they're going and where they're going during the day or at night? I'm going to say yes, but I agree. Because they don't have lights, you're going to have a boat hit it. So, but remember, there are channel markers all throughout our area. Yes, they have a reflective sign, I'm pretty sure. All of them have a reflective sign?
When you're in the...
Yeah. So these we would look to have, they would have reflective signs as well.
The ones that you talk about are aids to navigation. These are not aids to navigation.
It's not an aid to a navigation, it's a safety marker.
Right, so they're not marked on your GPS.
Yes, they are.
They will be, yeah. Yeah, but-
Yes, they are.
Yeah, they would be identified and marked by your GPS. We did not get to that point. They would have, these are not very good images. You'd have to look at it closer. So, yeah, bottom line is there's some responsibility on boaters, but yes, we understand. There have been in the nearly 30 years I've been in Florida, I can remember 3 instances where a boater hit a jetty. I can remember when I was up the road working up in Clearwater where a boater hit Sand Key Jetty and killed themselves. It was determined that it was just boater wasn't paying attention. It's on your GPS. They were going too close to the shore, but beyond the swim zone and didn't see the jetty. Go ahead.
I think as a boater, if you went out and you know how storms come up, and if you had heavy, thick fog, you would need some kind of reflector or light on that pole. That's just my opinion.
Well, and they would have a reflector, it wouldn't be just completely dark. But so due to the concerns, these were all removed. Again, the intent, and I will say that in looking at other parts of the country, other parts of the world where they do have poles and pilings for swim zones, they are a little bit more separated. We simply utilized what the city had been, its existing permit from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission that has been in existence for several decades. And the permit actually identifies that each buoy is to be about 200 feet apart. But it varies, but that's why there are so many buoys out there when they were out there. And so we were replicating with the poles or pilings. So we've removed those and now we're looking, pretty much what we've gathered is buoys are the better way to go. One, visually, historically they've been there. I will tell you that a couple of cities have recently switched from poles and pilings to buoys. But at our last meeting, somebody brought up a good idea of putting a pole or piling at both ends of the swim zone. So if anybody just goes up the coast, about 20 miles north, they will see that that city, that's what they did. So I don't know if that's where you got it from or whoever mentioned it, but that's what's happened up there. So they've removed the poles and pilings and put buoys. So just to give you that idea. Back to our swim zones, as we're going north on our sand, after 131st, the actual next identified or authorized swim zone is at the Pinellas County Park. I don't believe we have had buoys at that area for a long, long time. But that is an actual swim zone that the city adopted years ago. Our permit from FWC does not include that area. We don't know why, but again, our permit has been in existence for a few decades. Then the third area is the South Tower at Ocean Sands, which pretty much goes all the way north to 155th with a 232 feet area, I think, to allow motorized to go in and out all the way just north of Sereno. And of course, that area includes Archibald Park. So that's why, and the reason why these were created, we think obviously because these are the 3 main areas that have a parking lot or more parking in front of them than don't. So obviously Johns Pass Park, and then the Village, there's several hundred parking spaces. You go north to the County Park. County Park has about 98 parking spaces. Archibald Park, a little over 100 parking spaces plus other parking as you go west. So that's why these 3 were created. Why was it extended all the way to 155th? We don't know. So the question for all of you here, and we would like your input, your idea, to speak about what should the swimming zones be out here in our sand. There are handouts at each table that pretty much kind of cut our 2 miles long of sand into five sheets, and that's our entire coastline. And so question back to all of you is, what would you like our swim zones to be? What we currently have, expand them, contract them. You may take this with you, you may mark on it, you can certainly call, text, or email us, what do you think it should be? I will tell you, in the first meeting we had, it seemed to be a consensus to make our entire 2 miles a swim zone. That would mean no motorized equipment could then go on our shore at any point in time. Oh, sorry. And that's what, on the next slide, what should they be? Locations, again, how to mark and identify, I think we've pretty much figured out. Possibly a pole piling on the north side, so there would be one at 155th, pretty much letting you know. And for that one, we actually could put a light on it since it's only one, but it would have to be turtle compliant, so maybe we wouldn't be able to put, but if we chose to do one, it would be to notify particularly boaters that from this point south, there is a dedicated swim zone until you hit Johns Pass. So we would put one on the south end at Johns Pass, similarly telling you that going north, you are now in a swim zone. And every X number of feet, there would be a buoy.
So the pilings are exactly the same as what they are as channel markers. They have reflective signs that are 3 by 3 feet. They also have 2 strips of reflective tape. That is all that is required. It is not required to have a light on them, specifically due to turtles. Yeah. So the channel markers do not have lights unless they are the state navigable lights, and that's it. We're not required. As long as they are reflective, which they are, and will be, and were.
The only reason I'm so concerned about it is unfortunately I have 3 young kids that have memorials in the park that actually hit the green or red buoys in the intercoastal on their boat at night. And unfortunately, we've had three deaths there. So the reflective's great because even on these green and red buoys that sometimes the lights don't work. Sometimes
those
they're
are
not.
just a number that's reflective on them.
Right.
It's only about 4 or 5 inches tall.
Right.
But the thing is, you're not required of being a boater, and you really don't want a boater going down a canal flashing a light everywhere as he's going, or on the outside flashing a light, because that means something, you know, so the average boater is not going to be having like a car going down the road with headlights and all that stuff.
We'll check with FWC.
Yeah, we'll make sure that there's enough, the ability to see them, and yeah, we understand, we don't expect every boater to have headlights and lighting their way so that they know where they go, obviously. But there is some responsibility
Right.
on the part of every boater to make sure that you do know where you are going. But that's
There-
just my outlook on it. I'm all about safety. And if you don't know where you're going, you may want to rethink where you're going.
But if there's an alternative to having this pole, putting up buoys,
Well, no, but we're only talking about putting 2 poles, one at each end to identify. It also, we understand, but same as driving a vehicle, there's all sorts of hazards. We believe these are very, 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 very minimal hazards to identify a swim zone so that a swimmer isn't hit by a jet ski or by a boat, which almost has happened at least in the last year that I've been here.
They're also on the maps.
In the swim zone, you cannot have a boat go into a swim zone.
swimmers can go outside,
They're not supposed to. They're not supposed to.
but they can't.
Well, it's swim.
I wouldn't.
Swim at your own risk at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're doing that at your own risk.
Your own risk.
Yeah.
We can't
Yep.
stop them from
Yeah,
going
I
outside.
mean, it's encouraged that it's also, you're not allowed to litter, but people litter. There's
Right.
not much we can do to prevent people. Hold on, if you could grab the mic, please.
But again, these are also marked on the GPS maps
Thank
that
you.
I would say almost every boater has.
If you could use the mic, please.
I'll guarantee you that 3 million people that come here, they don't all have navigational maps. The swimmers
The
don't.
boaters don't?
The boaters don't.
Is that?
No.
Boaters are supposed to have them, but I can see if you're on a rowboat, you're not going to have one. But again, it is the responsibility of the boater to know where they're going. But that's
why-
just,
I mean, I don't see why you want to interject this hazard when you get.
it's not a hazard. That's what,
It
there's
is
all,
a hazard.
okay, well, we can agree to disagree, but it's something that a boater should know where they're going and and so that you can see what's in front of you.
Majority of our issues are during the day.
Right, not at night.
Not at night.
But But we'll take
can't-
that
you say you
into
can't swim
consideration
at
to
night.
make sure we don't create hazards. We don't want to do that. But by identifying a swim zone that can keep swimmers safer, that's really the key. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can do that with a buoy.
Hold on, let me get you a microphone. Thank you.
I apologize. Can you please clarify the location of the two poles again? One was at
So, no,
John's
so
Pass.
one
and-
would be, right, one
Right.
would be at the southern end of the city lines.
Okay.
So, and I can, so it would be, well,
Southern end of the swim zone.
correct. Well, that's kind of our southern limit, right, southern end of the swim zone at the Johns Pass waterway. So where my pointer is here, this is currently, this is the Johns Pass waterway over here.
Okay.
And here is the Johns Pass Park, the parking lot. These little dots represent our permit where buoys or poles or pilings, but buoys are allowed and have historically been located. A discussion, or what we may be considering, is to put a pole or piling to again begin to identify the swim zone right here at this point,
Okay,
which
and
is at the southern point of Madeira Beach or the waterway. The second one would go,
At 155th.
yeah, at the northern end of our water, well, sorry, me,
That's past Archibald?
yes.
Yeah, it's right at our city limits.
Okay,
So this, yeah, let's do this.
okay. That's really,
So at 155th Avenue,
okay.
this is the northern end of our sand right here. Again, these little dots represent the locations of the buoys.
Okay.
This is the very northern end of, this is 155th, the access to the sand. And a discussion, a possibility is to put a pole piling here. So as you're traveling from the north heading south, you would very visibly, if you look to your left, if you're on your boat out here somewhere, you would be able to see this sign that you are now in a swim zone. Again, just a discussion. It's not something we're just getting input and ideas as to what. Go ahead.
The only other concern I had is, you had a drowning or maybe two drownings that come out of Johns Pass. Did those drownings come from people that were at the south end of Johns Pass Park, or were those people in the actual channel and got sucked out?
No, one was from the sand for sure.
One was at around 133rd, and the other one was on the area that's supposed to be stretched out.
Yeah, that's just a concern for the swimmers that I had, you know, you don't want to get sucked out, but I understand you want to take it all the way to Johns Pass Park to have swimmers, that's why people are going to the beach, right? But that's just a hazard I was worried about.
Yeah. Well, that's always been a swim zone.
It's always been, right?
Yeah, there wouldn't be a change to
Okay.
the swim zone. Well, unless we think, Marcy. Thank you.
I was a PE teacher, I catch. You're talking encompassing the county park also?
Correct.
Okay, so
Yeah,
two
and we would-
poles, two poles only?
Yes.
One at the
Plus
start,
buoys.
one at the
Yeah,
beginning?
plus the buoys too.
Plus the buoys in it,
Yep.
yeah. Okay.
And again, so just so everybody's, all these, to give you, and I know it'd be better if we had an actual image of the buoys themselves, but A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, those are, and this is between 155th going south, 154th, eventually 153rd. These were the buoys that were here before, and you can see that this is 527 feet from this buoy, number 1 to number 4, or A to D. So 527 divided by, if you divided by 4 or 3 to give you the distance between the 3, you're looking at less than 200 feet. So when the poles pilings were installed in lieu of the buoys, you had 4. Could one of them had worked there? Probably. I will admit to that, instead of putting 8 buoys, A through H, probably 1, 2, 3 poles, maybe 4, in lieu of the 8 that were out there. And that's where people know they look terrible. Yes, sir.
This is, yeah, working. Backing up a little bit, we have 3 swim zones.
Well, 4 that have been approved, but 3 that we were marking.
Okay.
That are permitted.
What was the
3.
4th that were
The
not?
county park, 144th,
Okay.
145th.
Then we obviously have non-swim zones. So besides the fact that then you can pull a boat up to the beach, what else is restricted? I mean, it sounds like a non-swim zone. So can you not swim in this non-swim zone?
You can.
You can, I mean, that's.
Okay.
That
But you-
just means that anything is welcome in that area. So we're not just talking about
except
boats or
boats
jet
come-
skis and the
Okay.
non-swim areas that are not marked. Anything that is not marked is open to anything that has a motor.
Where are those at?
Everywhere in between Ocean Sands, south of Ocean Sands to 131st.
So
the
if we,
Definitely
the
by
majority of our
permits.
beach.
if we made the whole beach swim zone, then the whole beach would need to be marked.
Correct.
Which then means that the surfboards that have the motors on them will not be allowed inside that area either.
But kayaks and non-motorized
Anything
Non-motor.
that doesn't-
vehicles.
Yeah, no
All right.
motor.
Okay.
And that's throughout.
If we do the whole entire beach, yes.
Go ahead, Corey.
I don't like the word beach anchoring, because I think by code, you're not allowed to drive your pontoon boat up on our beach. Code prohibits driving your boat up onto the beach.
So you can,
But you can
Anchor
out.
within,
Yeah, you can be
anchor in the
Yeah.
water, but
50
not
feet from the
beaching your
sand,
boat.
yeah.
Just
yeah, thank you for clarifying. yeah.
clarification, yeah.
Yeah, you cannot beach your boat.
Within the, yeah.
Even in a non-swim zone.
I guess
Yeah,
per
you
code,
cannot do it,
no. Per
period.
code, no.
But you see boats come up within, well, right now, I haven't seen one in the last 6 or 7 months go beyond the second sandbar because they may bottom. I think one tried and they floated through when they realized they couldn't put their motor down. They had to put the motor up. But yes, they can get as close to the shore without going on, up and onto the sand. And you could see here on this image where I mentioned, here's a 232 feet area that was not identified, not permitted, meaning that you could you could have motorized equipment go through there into that area. Why that is, maybe there was a business there years ago and they requested it, we don't know. But that's how, these ordinances were adopted a lot in the 80s and in the 90s. So this has not been reviewed since that time. Any other? So out of curiosity, any thoughts on leave the swim zones as they are, expand them? Oh, there's a microphone right there in the middle.
Once it's green, it's good.
So you can't park a boat even in the tidal zone.
If it's in a
So
swim
if you
area,
anchored a boat and the tide went out and now your boat's on the ground, but you're within the tidal zone.
I don't think the tidal zone has anything to do with it.
Yeah, it does.
no.
It's the distance from the water line. It's 300 feet from the mean high water
Well,
line. Where a swim zone is marked begins at the mean high water line 300 feet west.
Yes.
You cannot bring your boat within that 300 feet area.
well, I'm
It's
talking
just a
about
distance.
The open area there where you can't.
Oh, that open area, you can. That's
Right.
that's
So
allowed.
I can go up,
Yep.
anchor,
Yep.
and then at high tide.
Whenever.
And then the tide goes out, my boat's on the beach.
Well, you gotta be able to anchor appropriately,
Yeah.
watching tides,
Yep.
part of being a responsible boat owner.
You got to make sure you anchor appropriately and watch the tides.
There's sandbars out there too.
Right. They're
That
constantly
get stuck
moving
in.
sandbars, yeah, right.
Yep.
All right.
So, any thoughts of changing the swim zones?
Extending,
Yeah, extending them, leaving them the same?
The last meeting, I suggested that to have 4 swim zones and not encompass the rest of the 2-mile beach, in my opinion, I think is ludicrous because you're allowing people to come up with jet skis in the non-swim areas. So that's why I suggested to do the whole 2 miles with the buoys for the swim zones, and then put telephone poles on each end, saying that you're entering a swim zone and a fine. That's it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, let us know at any point in time what your thoughts, oh, one more.
Is this similar to what's happening in, say, St. Pete Beach and Treasure Island? Because I know they have the buoys, I just don't know if they're consistent all the way through the city. In Treasure Island or St. Pete Beach, there's probably some open areas and then some marked areas where the hotels are and things like that.
Yes.
So it's consistent.
I don't think any of our surrounding beaches have a whole entire beach of marked swim area.
There may be Indian Shores, but
Yeah, Clearwater Beach does, from its southern point where the opal sands, where their sand begins.
Yep.
That is a swim area from there, I think almost 2 miles north. Till
Right.
you go past, until you hit the main residential area. And that's where, on the northern part of it, they put a pole.
right.
Not a telephone, a buoy,
Okay.
I mean, a pole piling with the sign. And again, if you're coming from north going south, that's telling you that the rest is a swim zone. And then they have buoys now that they removed the poles and the pilings and replaced them with buoys. But they are about 500 feet apart is what it looked like up in Clearwater Beach. Go ahead.
I think it's much more reasonable what you're presenting now than what was previously done, having 2 poles, either on each end, buoys, continuing with the buoys on there. And also, perhaps there was talks of lifeguard, being
Yeah,
the
we'll
safety.
get to that, yeah, in a
Okay,
few
yeah,
moments.
great.
yeah.
But as far as that, in addition to the lifeguard, I think that is a very reasonable, presentation of what was previously done.
Thank you.
I think we're just much more residential here, compared to some of that Opal area.
sure.
That's a lot of tourists there, so.
Well, we get a lot of tourists. also.
But
Yeah,
I mean,
it's-
but it's about half residential as well here.
Right, no,
too,
it's
so.
very well mixed up and
Yes,
down the
exactly.
beach, although the majority, I think, you may be aware, a lot of our condo units have now gone from being homesteaded to non-homesteaded.
Mm-hmm.
So the owners either sold or converted to an investment property, which you are allowed to overnight rent on the west side of Gulf Boulevard. So we're seeing that occurring a lot more than it did a decade ago or 20 years ago. It's just what's been happening as prices have, inflation, everything else. So it's just what's been happening. Part of the reason why our population declined from 2010 to 2020. So, any other for swim zones? Please, if any comments at any time, please feel free. We can and we likely will begin placing buoys back in because we do have a permit to do that. To expand the swim zone to the full 2 miles, we do have to submit another permit asking FWC, here's our swim zone. I don't imagine that they would say no, but we don't know. It's up to them. I don't see why they wouldn't, since there already are a few cities that have a sizable swim zone. This is an image, again, from 155th, which is sort of right here. This is the swim zone, the northernmost swim zone. And then from this southern point here, south begins the 232 feet of a non-permitted, meaning that motorized equipment can go in that area. It's, from my perspective, probably not the safest, but So, well, just north of Sereno, like just before you hit Sereno, it's 230, so about 153rd. You have from 155th to about just south of 154th or even. And then at 153rd, it picks up the swim zone again, going,
No, I'm talking about going south.
yeah, going south from 153rd all the way down to the south line of the south tower of Ocean Sands.
Will you go back to the map? That might help.
She's asking where it picks up again,
Yeah,
right?
it should pick up around 145th.
You mean south of Archibald?
Yeah.
It doesn't pick up again until 131st.
Madeira Beach, what about the county beaches?
That is not, so the city adopted an ordinance years ago identifying the county park as a swim zone, but then when the city obtained the permit to place buoys at the swim zones to identify them, they did not, the city for some reason did not include this area. This is the county park. So that's why there are currently, nor have there been, buoys in front of the county park. The next area is all the way down to 131st.
Is Kitty Stewart included in that?
No,
No.
no. Kitty Stewart has not been a swim zone for some time, at least the 2.5 years that I've been here.
It has
So-
never been a swim zone.
So basically from the county park down to 131st, that's
Not a swim zone.
Not a swim zone.
Not a
That's
designated.
the bulk of the beach there. Yeah.
You get considerable number of people in the water. You do typically, I think the least busy part of people in the water is probably south of Stewart. I would say south from about 140, 139 down to about 136. That's usually the least sparse. You go out there
Yeah.
and look at everybody that's in the water, that's usually a gap. Even people on the sand, that tends to be a gap.
So in that whole stretch, you can pull your boat up there.
You just
You can
can't,
anchor your boat.
you can
Right.
anchor your boat pretty close to the, yeah.
Yes.
But you cannot drive your boat all the way up into the
Right.
sand.
But that makes it available for motorized kayaks and those motorized
E-coils.
surf, yeah. I think that's great. I think you did a great job. Thank
So-
you.
So you
Right.
think leave it the same?
So leave that open for motorized, Bill?
I don't think there's been an issue, right? I think,
Thankfully, we have not, no. We've had, I mean, the chief and I think the lieutenant will talk about our water instances or water, I forget what you call it, water rescues, water issues here in a moment. But in terms of boats going up onto or near the shore, the 2.5 years I've been here, I've seen maybe 4 or 5 boats get close to the shore. But in that area, because I typically go south of Stewart,
I
as part
see
of,
it.
and that's where, when I go and I sit on the sand, I'm either sitting at Archibald or sitting south of Stewart. And I've seen a few boats come, but they stay away from people normally. I did one time, almost 2 years ago, I fell asleep for over an hour. And when I woke up, about 20 feet to my right, there were people who had assembled a boat. I think
geez.
like a little bit of looked like a sailboat, but it didn't have a sail, but a Hobie cat that they assembled. And then, because when I woke up, I'm like, wow, they're awfully close. And there was nobody 200 feet to my left, and then nobody like 200 feet north of them.
Right.
And then they assembled it and pushed it out into the water, and away they went. But
well, I think you guys did an excellent job of identifying it and addressing the concerns of the residents. And
Thank you.
I thank you very much for a great presentation.
Thanks for attending. So please let us know of anybody else that you hear. We're still taking the information to make a decision, or a final decision. We may actually have one more meeting in July just to try to encourage more participation. So lifeguard. Again, as I stated, Madeira Beach, to our knowledge, has not had a lifeguard program, at least in the last 20, 30, 40 years that we're aware of. And Clearwater Beach has had one for some time, and the county, at least at Fort DeSoto and Fred Howard Park. I don't know if the county had it at other parks. Well, I mean, other than Sand Key, but I'm not sure if at one time Clearwater had, or it's always been the county. Either way, there have been lifeguards at Sand Key for a long time as well. So a lifeguard program is something, obviously, they're visible, they're there. They can obviously promote in addition to just having eyes onto what may be happening, they're there so they can get quicker to any swimmer that may be running into some issues. They can, obviously, it's a shorter amount of time to respond to any emergency. Plus, just being out there and encouraging people and communicating and being advocates for water and swim safety just all around, and even keeping boats out. So the challenges, and we are looking to gather information input as to whether we create one or not. First of all, obviously there's a cost to funding it. We have to determine staffing levels, what type of staff. They would have to have various certifications, et cetera, between water and EMS, and the chief and the lieutenant can go into that in more depth. Also, what equipment will we need? What types of towers, or if anybody has been to Fort DeSoto or Sand Key or up to Clearwater, they have different types from kind of very narrow towers to some very elaborate that Clearwater put before I left Clearwater, that then I think a couple of them got destroyed in storms and flooding because they were really heavy to move out, but they were all mobile. So they're obviously staffing equipment are your biggest costs. Challenge in actually finding enough personnel. How many personnel would we need? Would they be seasonal, year-round? Regardless of if we come up with a pilot program or try it for 6 months or a year or whatever, the funding for this would come out of our parking fund. So our visitors who come and pay to park would pay, whether our costs are initially $200,000 for equipment and training, or as I put, just initial for capital and operating. We maybe look for grants to buy certain equipment, but what locations, where would we put them? We obviously have limited space where to go, particularly at Archibald where we had the sand dune restoration. But do we put them Archibald? Do they go down Johns Pass Park near the actual Johns Pass waterway? Probably that would be a great place to start if we chose to proceed with this. And then possibly one at Stewart Park. So those are kind of the decisions to make, but we're looking at probably a minimum of having about 12 to start. But again, we're looking to get whether there's interest in even pursuing it. I know the county has never really looked kind of comprehensively through the entire coastline. Again, you have a gigantic gap in between Fort DeSoto Park and Sand Key Park that has not had a lifeguard program probably forever. Chief?
Can you hear me? Yeah. All right, so just to kind of give an overview of the need, in my opinion, is at the first meeting, which was about 2 weeks ago, there were 165 water rescues in Madeira Beach since 2020. And in that 2 weeks, as of yesterday, there's 173 now. 37 drowning incidents where dispatch they'll dispatch us out. They'll have the term or the word drowning, and whether that person actually drowned or not, you have to really dig through the call notes, and that's very time consuming. But we did respond to 37 drowning incidents. I think it's a great program. We would probably mirror Clearwater Fire Department, and we just kind of want everybody's input on it. Yes, sir.
You're not sure if there were actual deaths, 37 deaths?
I don't think there's 37 deaths, 37 drowning incidents that we responded to. I stopped counting at 10, and I'd probably gone through half of the reports, but 10 confirmed deaths, and that wasn't through all 37 incidents.
You could give them, grab that. Sorry.
Are there any patterns in the circumstances of the drownings?
No, one was a gentleman on a raft, he slipped off and he couldn't touch the bottom, and that was the most recent one. Don't know if there was alcohol or drugs involved, horseplay, who knows, but, that's what we responded to. I guess it was about a year ago, the 3 paddle boarders, they just got out too far, one fell off. I mean, it's really no rhyme or reason.
And is this at daytime or at night?
Mostly day.
In the 2.5 years that I've been here, he just pointed out there have been 3 drownings out here. Deaths, yeah, they drowned and died. He mentioned 2 of them. The other one, I think, was an older gentleman went out, and then the spouse saw him face down on the shoreline. When they came, they could not revive him. Don't know if he had, medical, I think some of these have medical conditions attached to them, or whether the person did not know how to swim. But they do happen. There were the swimmer who came down as part of a swim team from Canada. That was in Indian Rocks Beach a few months ago. So there have been some that have been publicized where the drowning resulted in death, which, again, something that we're looking at whether the county would want to address it comprehensively. That has not happened. I think we're approaching a point in time that the county is looking to address it again, because if anybody remember, I guess you have the perception, and one of the items that's here on the presentation is public tourist perception. So perception can alter a reason, a decision for somebody wanting to come out here. Does somebody going to a beach community, do they go there because there's a lifeguard or a lifeguard program? Some yes, probably a majority no. But there have been how many drownings that led to deaths just in Florida in the last 2 weeks? I think we were at 8 or 9. But again, you look at where they happened, certainly the Atlantic is a much more fierce body of water than the Gulf of Mexico. People like to come to Pinellas County to go to a beach because you can read and you'll learn that the Gulf waters are much calmer than if you want to go to Daytona Beach, Pompano Beach, other areas you just don't want to go because they're not as nice. But certainly you come to the West Coast because you can see a pretty sunset, for one. But the bottom line is to promote additional safety. Are we at a point where that needs to occur? And again, this would be funded out of parking. The city is looking to increase our hourly parking rate, currently at $3 an hour to $4 an hour, which would likely more than cover the cost to establish and then further keep such a program if we choose to keep it years into the future. So that's kind of where we are. We would come up with the much more specifics of the equipment costs, the staffing costs. Although obviously the fire has already done some significant research that we have in terms of some of the costs and what the salaries would be, getting some of that data from the county and from Clearwater as to how that works. For those of you who don't know, I started my career in Clearwater. I worked there for 21 years. The last 16 years I was the city auditor. And all that time, Clearwater had a lifeguard program. In case you're wondering, Clearwater Beach gets almost as many visitors to the beach as we do, but in terms of, I should clarify, as I said earlier, we get more people who visit Johns Pass Boardwalk and Village and Boardwalk versus probably going to the beach. But we still have hundreds of thousands of people that are on the sand throughout the entire year, and of course, ebb and flow depending on the time of year. Clearwater Beach is the same. Clearwater Beach is wider. You now have the mega resorts along Clearwater Beach, which are not coming here. Madeira Beach has never had a plan to convert the beach into mega resorts. Clearwater had a plan to do that. I'm telling you because I was there when it started. The city had years of discussions of creating what Clearwater Beach is today. The city of Madeira Beach has never, to my knowledge, in the 2.5 years I've been here, has not had those discussions, and going back in time, those discussions did not happen either. So just to kind of clear that. But the point being is they made that decision years ago for their safety. we're either the second or the third most visited beach in Pinellas County. I'm sorry, second or third most visited area in Pinellas County after St. Petersburg and Clearwater. People come to Madeira Beach. And of course, we're getting, as I said, hundreds of thousands, at least 1 million that are on our sand throughout the year. So if any input you may have.
So if you were at Clearwater and they had a lifeguard program, so is there fewer drownings there because of the lifeguard program that lead to death?
I haven't done that research comparing prior to when they had the lifeguard program versus the one they currently have. I haven't done that research, but it is a heavily populated beach, so I believe their number, we were at 173 and they were at 235, I think the number.
Water
is off the top of
rescues.
My head, yes.
All the years that I was there, I can remember about 2 drownings that resulted in deaths. And part of the issue in Clearwater was that the lifeguards were only on duty when they were, I think the lieutenant was there at the time, but I recall that they were only scheduled like 9 to 5 or 8 to 5. And then they were, and then only from the majority of the main parts of the sand, I think from September through April or September, so seasonal. I recall a couple of drownings that occurred in the evening after there were no lifeguards. So that's why Clearwater, expanded it, and they expanded the coverage to sunset during the peak times of the year. So to answer your question, if you have lifeguards out there, the chance of somebody surviving a water episode are significantly.
Absolutely.
They're significantly increased. We've had 2 missing children. My wife and I were actually on the sand a few weeks ago, and we started walking south. We were south of Stewart, started walking. When we got to 135th, all of a sudden I see our boat, Madeira 25, come around. There were already a few others, the Marine units out there. I think the Coast Guard, the Eagle, the Pinellas County helicopter. So I looked on my phone, and they're searching for someone in the water. As I walk a little farther down to 133rd, 132nd, I'm still looking, and I got a deputy, and they said, yeah, missing 7-year-old. The good news is the missing 7-year-old was found. The 7-year-old was found 11 blocks away from where their family was located on the sand. Thankfully, the child did not go into the water. Don't know if the child knows how to swim or not. You had a lifeguard out there. That likely would have been that time period where the child would likely have been would have been reported quicker. The response would have been a few minutes faster. When you're talking about being next to the water, that can save a life. That likely will save a life. It's difficult. You have people, if you've been out in the sun too much, alcohol's involved, you could just be tired, but clearly having eyes on the water do help versus not having eyes on the water.
Would the program prevent all drownings from happening? No, unfortunately, but rapid CPR, that's going to save lives. They'll have an automated defibrillator. They'll be able to provide care within 30 seconds to a minute versus 5.5 minutes, and that is going to have a big impact.
I know the ship has sailed, but have there been any studies since they've started allowing alcohol on the beach, which they didn't used to?
No, I'm not even sure.
Alcohol related or?
I'm not sure.
I don't know, how long has Madeira Beach allowed alcohol on the sand or not prohibited it? It's been
I've
a
been
long,
here
long
12
time.
years, and it's always been.
It's been forever.
Oh, they changed, just a few years back, they
But
changed.
so Clearwater Beach does not allow alcohol on the sand, but in the 19 years that I went out there, the first 2 years I worked there, I lived in Tampa, so I didn't go to the beaches. Anyway, for 19 years that we went to Clearwater Beach, people brought alcohol. There was no secret. Police would issue tickets, which people were like taken back because it's a $180 ticket. But unless you're being stupid about your alcohol, people brought it out all the time. It just wasn't legal.
incidents, how many of the incidents, with involved boats?
The water rescues, I'll say it's probably 50-50, whether it's a boater in distress taking on water, a medical incident happens, and they're coming in back from offshore. Boating versus a swimmer, that, I don't believe that has happened. LT, do you have any information on that one? So this is Lieutenant Sleppy, and he used to be a lifeguard supervisor actually for the county, and he would be able to help get this program up and running, tell us exactly what we need, what the ideal locations for these towers. He'd be a huge asset to get this program up and running.
I'd like to add real quick, since I have this cool box in front of me, I haven't used this yet. I usually don't speak in meetings, but I want everybody to know that if you have lifeguards on the beach, it is a proactive resource that the city would be implementing. For the fire department, nothing against us, but we're reactive. We don't know these things are going on until our bell goes off, and then we go to where that problem is. A lot of these lifeguards on the beaches can see these things and prevent them from happening from the first place. When I was the supervisor at the county, every single one of my lifeguards got a clipboard full of paperwork. Throughout the day, they'd go, hey, I responded to 35 people that got tagged by a stingray, right? So they handled that. That keeps our truck in service for people that are having really serious medical problems or car crashes, or whatever the case may be that our fire station should be going to. It keeps our units in service because the lifeguards can go ahead and handle some of these minor incidents like a stingray. Hey, I need a couple Band-Aids, or I got cut by a shell. These lifeguards can handle that stuff. Just 2 shifts ago, B shift workday cardiac arrest on the beach side, not relating to drowning. So I want you guys to know, don't tunnel vision just to lifeguards stop drownings. They respond to medical scenarios or missing children, signal aids, as we used to call them, throughout the beach, because they're constantly being vigilant and looking and being a proactive resource to keep bad things from happening. That being said, things are going to happen that slip through the cracks, but they can certainly drop the call volume on the beach so that our resources here for vehicle crashes, structure fires, power lines down, a serious medical event in somebody's home, now these guys that are on duty can actually respond to those instead of being stuck out on the beach. Because when we go out on the beach here, it takes a long time for us to get back in service. Just so you guys are aware of that. Here you go.
Oh, thank you. I understand the proactivity of the lifeguards a lot, but I was wondering if there's any way we could get grants or something instead of.
Yes.
I know we're getting
sure
partial
there are.
grants, but
The-
it just seems like a lot of money. And I don't mean to sound unsympathetic at all. I don't want anybody to drown. But I would think you could take some of that money and put it to better use, kind of like our flood mitigations and stuff like that. I mean, that's how I feel.
Yeah, I understand that. But from my perspective, it'd be irresponsible of me not to at least present this to the community. That's my job, is life safety.
Yeah, I understand
so
that.
but I can understand your
And I don't want
opinion as
anybody
well.
to drown, but I've lived here my whole life, and I've always heard our beaches are some of the safest around with the sandbar, and, I'm not saying that people can't.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying you're gonna find them at the, people might drown at midnight and we're not on duty, and
Absolutely.
I was just thinking, maybe we could somehow get some grants and then let the city use that parking
We
money.
can absolutely explore the grants, especially
just
more
my
so
idea.
for
I
equipment.
don't want to sound
No, not at all.
unsympathetic.
Not at all.
Along the same lines, maybe looking at this, backing up to keeping 3 swim zones, looking at the lifeguards at 3 swim zones instead of covering everything as a kind of a startup. Plus, those are the biggest areas in terms of,
Yeah.
and I think we talked about that already, that it's the biggest population for the swimmers in the number on the beach. Plus, the other thing with all this stuff going on about mean high water and property, I don't know what the city would do trying to put towers anywhere but right at the parks that are designated.
Yeah, they would only go essentially at John's
Right.
Pass Park
That way,
area in
it's
Archibald.
it's not really an experimental program. It is, we're doing this, we're looking at the most concentrated areas, see how that works, see what the numbers are, and kind of move from that.
Sure.
As opposed to doing the entire beach with buoys and all.
Yep.
My 2 cents, anyway.
Yep.
Along those lines, like perhaps maybe seasonal, like spring break. Obviously, you know, the fall, I mean, it's pretty low season, so maybe just
Yes.
consider like the high
Yeah, we would.
tourist time.
We would try to mirror what the county does. They usually start staffing the lifeguards mid-March until September. We would probably do it along the same lines, maybe leave it open one more month since it's still pretty hot into October or even December and January. Our beaches are still visited. But we would definitely look at it probably seasonally at first and just, probably have another one of these and get the public's input on it.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and that, as I said, Clearwater has gone through iterations of it in terms of doing it, and so has the county. So we would, get some data, obviously, from them, and what they have now seems to work for them. Again, they haven't, but again, you're not going to catch every single instance, every single incident, but I think there are families, and I have had families mention, well, there's no lifeguards. Has the city ever considered lifeguards? That seems to have grown in my second year here over my first year. Numerous families, particularly at Archibald, where you tend to get some of the younger day visitors because they know you come over the causeway and it's right there. You don't have to drive too far. Not that it's that far to go down to John's Pass Park or another area, but I've probably had, I'm going to say, approaching 50 to 60 folks who are primarily with younger kids asking about, have you ever, and I said, well, no, but the city has not had one in a long, long time, but it's something we may be looking into over the next year or two. So it is even from visitors, and I speak pretty regularly with a lot of visitors, and they're nice about it. They're, try not to bother them. I say, hey, if you don't mind, if I could ask you a quick question, but so it's coming from our visitors as well. We will be adding on our website some input, so a brief survey, and it'll probably be very kind of a 5-question type survey, and then allow people to provide input as well, and we'll begin to promote that also. Go ahead.
Robin, you and I had this discussion last meeting about charging a head count. And because as a resident, don't get me wrong, it's a great idea. I don't want you to keep dipping, in my estimation, in the parking lot fund for Archibald. And my reason being that the future, you don't know what the future is. You don't know if you're going to get a hurricane to wipe out that park. You're going to need money to rebuild. And been to a couple budget meetings knowing that we really don't have a lot of money in the bank.
Not accurate.
We do.
You got 20 million?
Almost.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So you didn't like that idea, so I got a better idea.
Well, I didn't say I didn't like it. I said
Well,
we'd
you
look
kind of,
into
you
it.
kind of frowned on it.
I didn't think it was the best idea.
Well,
John. You've come up with much better
I'm
ones.
trying to somewhat
Sorry.
give you some kind of money so we can offset. So I'm sitting here and I'm going, how about instead of $4, when you drive into Archibald, it's $6 or $7 to go to the beach in your 3 designated areas.
Yeah, and that's a little bit, I think I mentioned to you about dynamic pricing, because you can, that would be where you can have different rates in different areas, and we discussed it when we were talking about going from 3 to 4, that a possibility is that for those that do go to John's Pass Village or Boardwalk would have different rate versus those that go to the beach.
Correct.
So yes, you could, and cities are exploring that in urban, so yes.
I'm trying to figure some way that we have something extra.
Yep, thank you. Any other comments, questions?
You want the box or the microphone? Your choice. There you go. Everybody's enjoying them.
So we can't put an economic value on somebody's life, so let's just put that out there. There's a great value there. It's not measurable, but we can measure economic costs. You say the fees will come from the parking, it'll cover that, but I'm sure that was already pre-spent and other things we had in mind anyway, so it's not as if it wasn't going to go somewhere and be used to some benefit. The cost you estimated, we're in inflationary times, and regardless, those numbers are going to get blown out of the water real quickly. There'll be a desire to expand the program, and there'll be expanding costs. We just kind of have to factor that in as a big piece of this. This can get away from us. We just need to give full consideration for the ultimate costs of such a program. Those assets can also be used elsewhere, but it's hard to measure. I'm not really providing a solution, sort of raising some questions about things that will be forthcoming as we administer a program like this. Yep. It'll be taxing to our community and taxing to our administrators as well.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, part of the, I think, going back to grants is also this, the conversation will continue with the county, specifically Visit St. Pete Clearwater, as I mentioned earlier, the tourist development tax that's used for, again, marketing, advertising, beach nourishment. We have not received beach nourishment funding until this past year for dune restoration at the 1,800 feet in and around Archibald Park. So that's where we're approaching Visit St. Pete Clearwater and the Tourist Development Council. We really, Madeira Beach has not, if we want to phrase it in the following term, we really haven't been receiving our fair share. However, that is somewhat subjective because, you know, they'll come, well, we do market and advertise, and we've produced videos promoting Johns Pass Village and Boardwalk, and there's a couple of those, and they've been funding some of our special events and they did an economic impact report for the Seafood Festival back in January that showed a significant economic impact to the area for the 3-day event. But I go back to, you know, kind of what have you done for me lately? Again, no beach renourishment, and again, water safety. It's been kind of very minimal, but that's been minimal from the county, well, for Clearwater, because they're the only city that has a lifeguard program, and they have not received anything from the county ever that I can recall, specifically for for a lifeguard program. I think some water safety maybe.
Yeah, there is a water rescue committee, and that's how we were able to get the electronics and the nighttime cameras for our current Marine unit was through that water rescue committee. Would it be able to fund an entire lifeguard program? Absolutely not. You have 18 different fire departments making this a request, in that I believe there was only $100,000 in that from the county. What we could do is if we do look to have these lifeguards at least certified at an EMT level, then at that point, I believe we would have a better chance to request funding from the county, from Pinellas County Emergency Medical Services, and it would have a little more teeth to it at that point.
Any other questions, comments? Again, thank you all so very much for coming out on a Saturday morning. Any other comments, please feel free to let us know. Go on our website. We will have a survey, hopefully by next week, regarding water safety and a little what we discussed, swim zones, lifeguards, have a little bit of detail on there and get some input from all of you, or continue to get more input.
Will you have a third meeting then where
think
the survey will be revealed?
Yes.
And I just want to personally thank the chief for being willing to tackle this. I've lived in the Gulf Coast my whole life, and I know a lot of firefighters amazing people, but not a ton of them go, hey, I'd really like to add one more thing to my plate. And so, I mean, I thank you and your staff for being willing to
Absolutely.
tackle this. And I know we'll do everything we can as a city to try and find the funding that's available to us from grants and all those other aspects. It's not just falling to the chief. All of the
Right.
city is working towards making it better, so we all help each other out. So if there's a grant out there that any of us see, we're all talking about it. So it couldn't be in better hands, honestly, and I'm excited that we're talking about it.
Yeah, and they respond anytime that call comes in or the text comes into the chief from a supervisor saying, hey, please send, fire medics out because the umpire in my daughter's game is about to keel over. And so I'm gonna have to deal with the wrath of my daughter telling her that I stopped her softball game. No questions. Obviously, they respond when a call comes in, and obviously that is very, very much appreciated, and they definitely appreciate what they do every day. So please let us know of anything else. Take some food to go. There's some to-go containers over here, but grab a snack and let us know of any other comments, questions at any time. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.